Fairfax, welcome to the Quiet Authority podcast. And today I'm going to talk about something that's really, really important if you're spending any money on advertising that's going to a sales funnel or to a website. This also applies there. And what I'm going to show you today is something that I've discovered over 20 plus years of working on paid ad campaigns and being a crucial decision maker at that point where the funnel is working and you begin to scale the ad spend, double, triple it. And of course, that's the really exciting part because that is when the sales go from addition to multiplication. And if you're watching this and you have a funnel that was working for a while and you started to scale the spend and suddenly you notice that it's falling apart. Maybe you're managing this for a client, maybe you're managing it for your business, but you're just stuck at this one ad spend point. Every time you try to push the ads up, it just seems like you see more money going out than you have going in. And that's very scary. Obviously, you can't sustain that unless you just have an infinite amount of money in the bank. And so, what most people do is they will stop their advertising. They'll cut the ads off, they'll pause the ads, which is a mistake in itself that we'll talk about. But what I'm going to show you today, if you do have a sales funnel that's starting to work and you're either afraid to scale the spend or you've tried to do it and it failed, I'm going to tell you the top three reasons this happens. And I guarantee you that either one, two, or all of these is something that you can fix and get that funnel that's not scaling to scale. And I know that for certain because I have looked at hundreds and hundreds of funnels. I've helped a lot of people scale, and everything always boils down to one of these things. In fact, I have never seen ad increase cause a funnel to fail without one or more of these factors being present. So there's no other possibility that I've seen over the past 20 plus years that would explain why your funnel is not scaling. So that's what I'm going to show you today. So if you've got a funnel you need to scale and it's just at a sticking point, or you just can't get it where it wants to go, or maybe you're working with clients and you're trying to scale their spend and you're scared to scale it, this is going to be the most important video that you've watched probably since you started managing and running paid ads. So, first of all, let's talk about what actually happens. So, you've got this funnel. Maybe it's a webinar funnel, maybe it's a VSL funnel, maybe it's a call booking funnel, maybe it's a tripwire, doesn't matter. Maybe it's an e commerce funnel. And you realize that you're making enough sales to where your ROAS, your return on ad spend, is positive. And so you think, okay, well, I just keep increasing my ad spend and I can make a lot more money, make a lot more sales, grow my business. It's easy street from here on out, right? But then something happens. You start to realize that your CPMs, which is your cost per impression, that's the cost that you pay to have your ad in front of, more than a thousand people. It starts to increase like really, really fast, and you make one crucial mistake that so even advertising agencies make this mistake, and this will absolutely break your results. Now, there's actually two other things that cause what I call invisible failure. That's where you look at the funnel and it just seems like it's not working like it was before, but there's no actual concrete indicator as to why it's not working. It's just like the sales start going down and you look at the heat mapping and you look at the analytics and you look at everything else and you're thinking, well, how is it that the same funnel that was converting well just magically stopped? And then you start developing these weird conspiracy theories about how, well, maybe Facebook is just out to take your money and maybe they're just sending you a bunch of unqualified traffic. That part is actually true, but it's you that's causing that. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. So this applies no matter where your ads are showing up. Okay. It doesn't matter. These three failure points are always there if you try to scale a funnel and it gets stuck. So maybe your funnel is stuck at you're spending 20,000 a month, 10,000 a month, maybe you're stuck at 100,000 a month. It's going to be one of these three things. Okay. So in case you want to take a deep dive into this subject beyond what you're going to hear in this video, I also write about this in chapter 10 and chapter 12 of my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. But I do suggest if you get the book, you read the entire book all the way up to those chapters, because if you just start on those chapters, it's not going to make much sense. I build a foundation in that book. And so first of all, let's talk about the most common mistakes. And this first one is so common, and you're probably making it because it seems like the thing to do. It seems like a smart thing to do. And I'll tell you exactly why it's not a good idea. The first failure point is when you try to decrease your CPM. In other words, you see that maybe you're paying, like, let's say $50 to get in front of every thousand persons. So for every thousand people that see your ad, you're spending $50, or maybe it's $80 depending on your niche. And as you start to scale, that $50 goes up to 80 or 120, or even I've seen some unbelievable CPMs that are just a couple $100. And you think, I got to do something to get that down. Now, some of you are listening to this and you're thinking, well, that's actually what I've been doing. Here's the problem with that: the ad platforms that are actually taking your money and putting you in front of people, they still have to make money. And so what they have to do, if you're saying, I want to pay less for leads, which I'll tell you exactly what you do to make that mistake in a minute. There are specific things that you're doing that are telling them you want to pay less for leads, and even if you don't explicitly tell them that. So if you tell them that, what they're going to do in response is they're going to start putting your leads in front of people who are not your buyers, are not even interested in a product or service like yours. And in many times, they're not even people who have the problem that your product or service solves. So in other words, you're paying $100 to get in front of 1,000 people, and you're thinking, well, that's good. I'm paying $100 to get in front of 1,000 people, but then you scale your ad spend and it goes up to $150, and you think, well, wait a second. I still want to pay 100 to get in front of those 1,000 people. And so you start making some of the mistakes, making some of the changes we're going to talk about in a second. But what you're actually saying by making the changes is you're saying, I want to pay less money and I want to get in front of different people. Now, just imagine that for a second. Imagine that your audience that you're talking to, these are people who either have the problem you solved or they're looking for a service like yours. They're people who are interested. They're qualified buyers. And then just imagine yourself on a stage. You're in front of all these people who are your qualified buyers, but then you realize the person who's charging you to be on stage wants to charge you more money. What would you do? Would you say, well, let's not do this. Let's go to the bar down the street or to the grocery store down the street or the Walmart down the street, and I want to pay the old fee that I had, and I want to get in front of these different people and expect to make the same sales. Well, obviously, you're not going to do that, right? I mean, think about how much sense that makes. In real life, no one in their right mind would ever do that, right? You wouldn't go from being in front of people who you know are your target audience and walk down the street and go to a department store or to Walmart or Goodwill or to like a baseball stadium that has junior high kids playing or whatever it is, unless that's your audience. You would never do that in real life. But when you make the changes that I'm going to talk about in a second, that's actually what you're telling the ad platforms, because they know where your people are. They have so much data on consumers. It's unbelievable. It's scary how much they have. And so what they're going to do is they're going to go, okay, you're paying less money. You want to pay less money. We'll put you in front of a different audience of people. And some of your buyers are still going to be in that audience, but you're marketing to a completely new audience. And so this explains, first of all, why your metrics on your funnel change so dramatically. And you're looking at your funnel and you're trying to fix your funnel and you're trying to fix your ad, but you've started marketing to a different person. And of course, what you were doing with the other audience is not going to work as well. Here's an analogy to think about it. Imagine that you own a restaurant, right? And you have like high quality things that you serve there, and you decide, I want to extend my dining room. I want to get more people in here, but I don't want to spend a lot of extra money on food. And so I'm going to buy cheaper food, right? I'm going to spend less time preparing it. And of course, the quality of your food goes down because you're charging less money, right? And you sell cheaper food to people, but two things are going to happen. Number one, you're not going to have the operational capacity to deliver a really good product. And not only that, you literally change the type of people that you bring in because you've lowered your price. Now, would you ever do that in your bit? Well, if you're smart, you wouldn't do it, but that's exactly what you're doing when you make changes that are designed to lower your CPM. I was talking to an agency recently who had something that was converting very well. In fact, on $300 of ad spend, they ended up making about 25,000 in sales on the back end. Now, this is for a guy who was a really, really great salesperson, was closing people on the phone, but it was a phenomenal ad spend to earn ratio. But then they started increasing the spend. And I was kind of a proxy looking at this agency, what they were doing, but they had other decision makers inside it. And I started pointing out some common things, some mistakes, some rookie mistakes that they were starting to make. And their response to me was, well, we found that making the changes you're suggesting is actually going to make our CPM higher. And I talked to them a little bit more and found out that their goal was to lower their goal was not to get more profitable people into the funnel. It was to lower the CPM. They were so fixated on that it actually caused the entire thing to crash, and they had to turn it off, and it's not making any money. Unfortunately, I wasn't a decision maker in that process, or I would have told them, look, make the changes, okay, because you're going to burn this thing down. And so the number one motive, that mistake that you can make in terms of your motive when trying to scale your spend, is thinking about, I've got to lower my CPM. That is the number one absolute worst thing that you can do for all the reasons I just talked about. There's two other things you can do that we'll talk about in a second. Now, what does this actually look like? When you're trying to lower your CPM, typically this is what a person will do. Number one, you're targeting, you'll start to pay for placements that are in places where your customers are not. For instance, on Facebook ads, there's actually, I think there's 24 placements now where you can choose to have your ad show. Some of them are on Facebook Marketplace where people are shopping for clothes and books and shoes. Some of them are in Messenger ads, like where people download apps. I mean, so you got people downloading apps all day and they're seeing your messages show up in the apps. And who knows what types of apps they're downloading. It may have nothing to do with your audience or the problem that you solve. And there's 24 total placements. And some of those placements are putting you literally in a place where all there is a bunch of ads, right? So in other words, you're paying to be in a place where obviously people are blocking the content out and not even staying on that page because all they're seeing is ads. They're going to skip them, right? So you're showing up in an overcrowded marketplace where you're next to an ad, and there's another ad next to you, and there's another ad next to you. And not only that, there's a setting on Facebook itself which says multi-advertiser ads, where not only do they put you next to a bunch of ads, but they put you next to a bunch of ads of people selling the same type of thing you are. Now, who would ever do that? Who would ever put themselves right next to a competitor in a huge panel of ads? Well, you might be thinking, well, I'm different than my competitors. Good luck trying to convince people of that on a simple image and text ad. It's not going to happen. That happens deeper down your funnel. And so there are actually 24 total placements, and there are only 9 that are really profitable for most niches. So think about that. If you're selling like an e-commerce product, like you're selling shirts, you're selling clothes, you're selling some sort of accessory product or something like that, and you choose to show up in Facebook Marketplace where they're selling books and clothes, well, that makes a lot of sense to do that. But I've seen people actually pay to get their high-level agency and coaching services to show up right there in Facebook Marketplace when people are just shopping for books and clothes and shoes. And it just makes absolutely no sense. I mean, if you were selling tires, would you go into like a bookstore and advertise for people to buy tires? You may get 1 or 2 buyers here and there, but you're burning up a lot of money to show up there. There are only 9 placements. And this is how powerful this is. I've seen people come into my coaching programs, and the only thing I did was went in there and changed their placements, and a funnel that was failing all of a sudden became profitable just by making that one change. Because what's happening is you're saying, okay, I want to lower my CPM. And so the ad platforms are saying, okay, well, it costs less to be here and it costs less to be here. And when you're saying, I want to be on these other placements, and you're seeing that your CPM goes down, you think you're winning because you're like, good, I lowered my CPM. The problem is you're getting in front of a bunch of people who either aren't qualified or aren't thinking about the thing that you're selling at all when they see it. And there's all kinds of other places. There's 24 of them. So there's 15 placements on Facebook ads right now that haven't, in my experience for the past 10 years, even been a smart place to put like 95% of the products out there. So you need to exclude, and you can look at your analytics and do this. You can look at your sales and the people who are visiting your page and look at which placement they come from. And I guarantee you about 80 to 90% of them are probably only coming from a handful of places. Turn all those other places off and only go for the places they're looking. Now, of course, the mindset here is, well, I want to show up in a bunch of places because the more places people see me, the more likely they are to buy. That's actually not true. It's not just being in a bunch of different placements. People also have to engage, right? That's the Google rule, which says they have to see you in a lot of different places, but there also has to be a certain number of engagements across multiple types of media. And if the person doesn't pay attention to your ad in the first place, it doesn't matter. Not only that, why would you want to be in a bunch of placements where people are not in your target audience? So the other setting that I see is there's this little thing on Facebook, and I think they have something like this on YouTube too, where you can check to only show your ads to people who are actually connected to Wi-Fi. You're probably thinking, what the hell does this have to do with anything? Well, if you turn that setting off, it basically says that you're going to show to anybody who is looking at anything online, no matter where they are, no matter what device they're on. right? If you check that box, you're only going to show to the people who are actually connected to a Wi-Fi. Now, why does that matter? Well, first of all, the reason a lot of people leave that unchecked and they advertise to everybody, not just people who are only on Wi-Fi, is they think, well, my CPM goes down. And if I check that box, my CPM goes up. So this, again, is the type of thinking that the goal is to lower your CPM. The problem is, think about this. If someone is not connected to Wi-Fi, where are they? They're probably out grocery shopping. They may be like either even at a red light. They may be at dinner with their friends. They're somewhere where they're just looking at this and they're distracted. So let's say they see your ad and they're interested. They click, they go to your page, but then all of a sudden it's their time to check out in line. The light turns green. Someone distracts them. Someone interrupts them. The likelihood of that person being distracted and abandoning your funnel and completely forgetting they ever went there is very, very, very high. And so you got to think not just about placement and not just about how much you're spending to get in front of people, but you got to think about, is it the right audience? And more importantly, is their intent in a place where they can actually engage and go all the way through the funnel? And more importantly, remember they did it, right? How many times have you been distracted and you did something and you forgot you did it until like a couple days later, you remembered you did it? So checking that box is basically saying, I want to be in front of people who are more likely to buy. Now you can uncheck it and you can say, well, it's going to lower my CPMs. I should do that. That again is the mistake of saying, I want lower CPMs. Okay. The other thing I've seen people do is running the wrong type of campaign. On most ad platforms, they allow you to run campaigns that target a certain intent. In other words, you can target the intent of buying. You can target the intent of filling out an application. You can target the intent of completing a registration, filling out a lead form. You can target the intent of simply them making a comment, clicking your ad, or just them seeing it. There's different types of intent that you're targeting. And what a lot of people will do is they'll go, oh, I can lower my CPM like dramatically if I change the intent only to engagement. In other words, you're basically telling the ad platform, well, I'm not going to target people who buy. I'm going to target people who are likely to just click like on my ad or make a comment. And maybe it even fools you because you see a lot more comments on your ad, but it doesn't matter because the person doesn't have the intent to buy. Now, the big question is, how do these ad platforms even know that? Well, they have so much predictive data and they have this monstrous AI that can predict based on like the Google 711-4 rule, I believe it's called, where Google can predict that if you watch this many hours of a certain type of content against this many types of platform, this many types of media, that you're more likely to make a buying decision. So they have these ad platforms and their partners, they have the data. Like they can listen to people when they're just talking with their phone nearby, and they can serve you up an ad just based on the conversation you're having. That's a real thing. And so they know if a person has the intent to just click, has the intent to just leave a comment, has the intent to make a sale. And what a lot of people do is they'll go, well, I'm paying too much to get in front of people if my intent is selling. And so I'm going to change my intent to engagement. And all of a sudden they stop getting sales. Well, why would you stop getting sales? Because you're basically telling the ad platform, I don't want people who are ready to buy. I want people who are ready to engage. And we fool ourselves into thinking, well, I'll get them to buy anyway. My ad's going to be that good. There is no type of advertising or psychology or copywriting, even what I teach, that can cause a person to make a decision that does not match their stage of readiness. Right? I talk about this in my book, Cold Fat Traffic Copywriting. People, and I'm going to talk about this in just a minute. People go through stages of readiness before they make a decision. First, they become aware of the symptoms and they start thinking, isn't that weird that this is happening? I wonder if there's something I can do about it. And then the symptoms get bad enough to where they start looking for a solution to the problem, but they're looking at a variety of solutions, maybe even thinking about doing it themselves, maybe even watching a YouTube video, maybe looking at different types of service providers or products than the one that you sell. And finally, if they make it through that stage, they target like a very specific product or service category, which is the one you belong in. And they go, okay, now I'm looking for a person that provides this type of product or this type of service, but now I'm shopping for the best one. That's the comparison stage. And then fourth is the stage where they've already been to your page. They've gone all the way to the checkout. They almost bought, but some last minute thing calls them to stop. Now, think about that for a second. How much sense does that make in terms of what you know about human behavior? That's how people make decisions. There's 4 stages, right? There's the first stage, second stage, third stage, fourth stage. And these ad platforms, even if they don't know these stages by name and have my framework, which they don't, by the way, they should buy it from me because they'd be able to like develop copy that matches stages. But even if those ad platforms don't know those stages by name, their AI is able to identify patterns that knows this person is farther away from a decision. And therefore, if a person runs a lead capture campaign and says they're targeting people who are going to be leads, well, they're going to target people who are just looking for information. They're not ready to buy something. Will they eventually buy something? Yes. But what happens a lot of the time is people get them as a lead and try to sell them something right away, and they turn the person off because they're not at that stage of their decision making process yet. And this is actually the number one reason why funnels fail, is because there are certain types of funnel that are appropriate for stage one. That's a webinar, a live presentation funnel. For stage two, it's a VSL. Can you use different other funnels for those? Yeah, but they're probably not going to work. Or if they do work, as soon as you scale the ad spend, they're going to crash for the reasons I just talked about, because there's a mismatch between your messaging, your delivery, and where the person is in their decision making process. And you can determine this now. You can tell the social media platforms or the ad platforms, you can tell them where you want to target people. But most people aren't doing this intentionally. They're just saying, well, I want lower CPM, so I'm going to target people who are likely to become leads or engagement. That's going to give me cheaper CPMs, and then I'm going to try to sell them. Good luck with that. That's not going to work, right? So that's another problem. So are you starting to see now where the goal of lowering your CPM is not the answer? There's something else that you need to do when your CPMs start to go up and you reach that scary point where maybe you're breaking even or maybe even losing a little bit of money on the ads. That's not a bad thing, because the whole purpose of a paid ad is to gain a customer so that you can sell them more things, so that you can keep them longer, so that you can get referrals, so you can add upsells, email marketing, automation to capture all the people who didn't buy right away. But relying, and this is the second failure point when scaling a funnel is relying only on the profits made from the first conversion as your entire profit engine for your business. And I have seen 8, 9 figure businesses make this mistake with their ads, that they never thought about anything but that first purchase. And they looked at their ROAS, and if the ROAS was down, they're like, well, I'm going to turn this off, or I'm going to turn the ad spend down, or worse, I'm going to look at for ways to lower my CPM because that'll solve the problem. And then they create the other problem. So the second thing is you're relying only on those front end metrics, right? That are telling you this is how much I made from my original sales. What you need to be able to do is have the attitude that cruises have, right? They sell these tickets to cruises for like $100, and then they upsell you all this other stuff. And I promise you, they're losing money by selling you a ticket for $100. But they know something. They know that if they can get you to say yes to that, they can get you into the experience and get you to say yes to a whole bunch of other things. And that's the second reason. And this is so common, it's silly, that people have a funnel that's working pretty well, right? They're making money on the front end, but then they try to scale it and they don't do anything, or they do very little, or they do it wrong when it comes to optimizing the back end, the email automations. Most people are doing email automation wrong. I'm working on a book about that right now, where you basically just email to everybody as if they're in stage 3 of the buying cycle, instead of recognizing this person's at stage 1, this person's at stage 2, this one's at stage 3, this one's at stage 4, and segmenting your email, not according to demographics or the product they bought or any of that stuff, but segmenting them according to their stage in their stage of the decision-making cycle. So that's the second reason. So if you're at a point where like your funnel's not scaling and you're thinking, well, what is it that I can do about this? First of all, don't do anything to try to lower your CPM. What you want to do is look at the placements where you're getting the most sales, you're getting the most tractions, turn off all the other placements in that. If you can, make sure that the only people seeing your ads are people in a place where they're not distracted and can finish their decision-making process and remember that they did it later, right? Because if they fill out a lead form or an application and they're distracted and they're somewhere else and they get distracted immediately after they fill it out, guess what's going to happen when you call them an hour later? I didn't do that. I didn't fill that thing out. I don't know what you're talking about. That's what's going to happen. So those are the second two things. Now, the second thing is not having a back end. Now, there are things you can add to your cart page. For instance, you can add up to 2 order bumps on your cart page. Yes, you can add 3, 4, 5, but I found that usually conversions break after 2. Things that accessorize the product or service that you're selling. In other words, while they're filling out the payment form, they check and say, yeah, I want this thing too. I want this thing too. And sometimes you can sell your order bump for 3 or 4 times what you're selling your low ticket product for, right? And some people don't even have these at all. Or if they do have them, they're just kind of putting something up there, but they're not testing different ones to see which one gets the most takes. And then you take the one which is getting the most takes and you make that one the first one they say yes to, because if they say yes to the first one, they're more likely to say yes to the second one. And the other mistake is when people are doing an upsell, you take them immediately to a page where they can make an upsell decision. But this is where most people are failing on upsells, is their upsell psychology. They're trying to sell a person a product that the person looks at and goes, well, I already bought something that solves that problem. Why would I need this other thing? And sometimes the upsell really does solve a different problem. It really does add more value for the person. But the language at the very top of the upsell page, I've seen this happen a lot of times where I just change the headline and the top header, and all of a sudden the person's making upsells because of the psychology. I talk about this in chapter 8 of my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. So trying to lower your CPMs is going to crash your funnel. Relying only on front end sales and not accepting that the whole purpose of running paid advertising is not to make profit, it's to earn a customer. And then you need to know the most important number in your business. And you'll want to write this down. You want to know your lifetime value, average lifetime value per customer. In other words, look at the customers who have bought from you over a 90-day period, right? Take all the money from those sales, let's say it's $100,000, and then you divide it by the total amount of customers that made those purchases. And you're going to see that it's what, for $100,000, 100 people, that's $1,000 over a 90-day period that your customers are worth. Most businesses don't even know this number. They're not tracking it, and they have absolutely no idea how valuable someone is going to be over the next 90 days or the next 6 months or the next year. And so their fear is causing them to only look at that front end profit. And because they don't know that other number, when they see the front end profit tanking, they completely shut it off, when indeed, like in reality, they may have had something that was going to work if they just knew their average value per customer. And not only that, when you know your average value per customer, you can look for ways to improve it. If you don't know what the number is, you can't even track it and see whether it's improving or not. The other thing you can do in terms of upsells is, if you're selling a shippable product, is have what's called a tag along offer, which is a little postcard that you can have inside the actual box of the thing you deliver that has a really simple QR code. The person scans it, they go buy something else, they get an upsell there, and they can send a link to somebody else and get them, or buy it for them as a gift. I have talked to so many people selling e-commerce and shippable products whose funnel won't scale, and they do not even have a tag along offer at all. And simply by adding a tag along offer, they can increase their lifetime value per customer by 20 or 30%. So that's the second mistake, is relying only on those front end sales. We'll talk about the third one in just a second here, but I want to see if anybody has a question in the chat. Don't see anything right now, but is this making sense? I mean, think about the first thing we talked about, the second thing. It sounds so commonsensical when you hear it, but are you actually doing it? Well, that's going to make all the difference in whether or not you scale your funnel. Now, the third point is the most common one. And this is so common that I would say probably about 90% of people who are doing marketing funnels are making this mistake. And I talk about this in chapter 12 of my book, The Anti-Fragile Sales System. And this is one of the places where I am very critical of my not so much buddy Russell Brunson, because he'll tell you you're one funnel away from success, right? You ever heard him say that? He admits in the book that he wrote a book about how he sold ClickFunnels, and he literally confesses in that book that the only reason he told people that was to sell ClickFunnels, and people still believe it. He's openly saying, like, this is why I convinced people of this, is not because it's true, because I wanted to sell ClickFunnels. That's why I told them they're only one funnel away. It's BS. Not only is it BS, that's not even how he built his business. I followed him from the very beginning, and he actually did this other thing that I'm going to talk about now. The third and the most common, the most costly reason people's funnels fail, and this applies to when you first launch it and to when you're trying to scale it. This is the most common cause of funnel failure. And I have revived funnels that were dead and making no money. In fact, I have one recently. I just talked to him yesterday. They had their first $100,000 year and are on their track to have a $200,000 year this year, simply by doing what I'm about to talk about. But their funnel was dead. It wasn't doing anything. The ads weren't even on because it was losing money. And now it's their main cash machine for their business. And there's only one thing we did differently that most people don't do, and it's called troubleshooting. Imagine this. Imagine you have like a pipe, right? You have a pipe and it goes all the way down here. It has an opening at the top, has an opening at the bottom, and you're pouring water into it, right? You're pouring water into the pipe. It's going down the pipe. It's going out this side. Well, the water that goes in here, all the water that goes in here is going to go out here, right? That's physics, unless there's a leak in it somewhere. If there's a leak, and you got a leak here, 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 well, you're going to be losing water as you go all the way down, right? Think of your funnel like that. There are leaks in your funnel. Now, look, not everybody is going to buy from you. Depending on how well your funnel is performing, you can actually have a profitable business from a funnel that's only converting at 1%. if you have all the back end stuff we talked about. I've seen some people who have 12% funnels. I have some people who have funnels that are converting around up to 20%. That's pretty rare, but I have seen that happen. But the reason why most people's funnels fail and why they fail when they try to increase the ad spend is because there are leaks in their funnel and they don't even know where they are. And more importantly, they don't know how to fix them. Think about this. Think about how many potential places there are for leaks in a funnel. You can lose people because they open the ad, but they don't click through. Of the people who click through, you can lose them because they click through on the ad and the landing page starts to open and it moves too slow and they leave. You can lose people because the people you're targeting are distracted and don't have time to actually go through the whole funnel. That's a leak. You can lose people if you have a sales page. I mean, depending on how long it is, you can lose them at any one of those points along the sales page. If you have a VSL funnel that's like 8 minutes long, you can lose them at the beginning. You can lose them 2 minutes in. There's all kinds of places that you can lose them. And so it's like, there could be a leak here. There could be a leak here. There could be a leak here. The problem is that you can't imagine if you can't see it, right? The pipe is like behind a wall or under your house or something like that. And the only thing that you know is that there's a leak, right? There's water coming into your house. And of course, you would hire a specialist to go out there and figure out where the leak is and fix it. Problem is that if you don't hire a specialist and you're just kind of trying to guess what's going wrong, which is what most people do, they either don't know where the leak is or more importantly, they don't know how to fix it. And so of course they're just guessing. They rewrite the headline. They change they're like, well, maybe it's the headline. Oh, I think that they come up with these weird theories. Like maybe the page is too long, or maybe it's this, or maybe we need to put more testimonials, or maybe we need to remove this or that, or maybe we need to change our targeting, or maybe we need to lower our CPM. But they're going to places in the pipe that aren't leaking. And meanwhile, the leaks are still going. That creates a second problem because in trying to fix the part that's not leaking, you may create a new leak. And this is the game of whack-a-mole that most people are playing because they don't understand how to troubleshoot. There's only two things you need to know to do this effectively, but I hope you're starting to see that if you have a leaky funnel and a leaky pipe and you start putting a lot more water from it, you're going to get more leaks, and maybe some of the leaks are going to expand and break and buckle. And then all of a sudden, that's how your conversion rates start to mysteriously go down as soon as you start scaling, because those weak points are costing you. And at scale, they may be costing you even more. So there are specific things that you look at. Number one, I talk about all these in chapter 12 of my book. The first thing you need to know is you need to know every single KPI in your entire funnel process. And not only that, if you're doing anything on a website or a landing page and you do not have heat mapping, you're throwing money away. You might as well like picture yourself taking like some money and putting taking a match and lighting it up and watching it burn and then throwing it in the toilet and flushing it down. That's what you're doing if you don't have heat mapping, because what heat mapping shows you is when you look at the page, it shows you their scroll rate, and you can see the places where there's a high drop off. Well, what does that tell you? That means that position of the page, something failed there, right? Or if you have a video up and you don't have those kind of stats that show you like how many people drop off, like where they drop off, and you're just guessing, well, the video needs to be changed. We need to make it higher. We need to make it more fancy. We need to hire a production team and have them come out here and do all this professional film. And then you change the video and you don't get any new results because you don't actually look. And there's so many people who don't do this. They don't even look at that one spot. What I've seen most of the time is the first 30 seconds of the video is losing like 70% of your traffic, but people will change the whole video instead of changing the first 30 seconds. Same thing with your calls to action, same thing with everything, same thing with your webinar. If you don't know your numbers at every single specific weak point, then you're not going to know what to fix. I'll give you an example. Most of the time, what happens is you have a person go to one page, then they click another page and they go to a checkout page and they finish purchase there. That's actually the smart way to do it. It's not smart to put the checkout on the same page because of what I'm about to tell you. What you need to do is have them click, even if you're not having them fill out a form, have them click a button, go through to another page and go to a checkout page. Now, why would you do that? Because of something called the law of averages. The law of averages is a universal mathematical law that applies to all human psychology, selling in any industry. I mean, you can do the math on this. It's called the law of large numbers. It even is used to predict the motion of like celestial bodies out in the cosmos. It's a very reliable law that says that the attrition rate for anything is going to be 10%. In other words, 10% of the people who are at this stage are going to go to the next stage. 10% of the people at this stage are going to go to the next stage. It's the same thing with a funnel if it's built right. So if you have a page that goes to a cart page You look at the page and you see if 10% of the people on your sales page are going through to your cart page, guess what? You don't change. You don't change a sales page. Don't do anything to it yet. But here's what a lot of people will do. Their sales will start going down and they start monkeying with the sales page instead of looking at and going, okay, wait a second, let's figure out what's really going on here. Is it the sales page or the checkout page? And if 10% or more of people from your sales page are getting through to your checkout page, unless you have been silly and put the buy button at the top, which you should not do unless you're selling a really simple product, right? That's another mistake people make is they think, well, we got to make more sales, so we'll move the button to the top. Well, then the person doesn't see any of the reasons why they should buy, and they think, well, who's gonna read all that copy? It's too long. Buyers read the copy. And I've seen a lot of people who have crashed their sales just by taking their call to action button and putting it at the top. And of course, people click it right away to find out the price. Then they go to the checkout page. They have no context in terms of value. So they bolt on the checkout page. And how do you know you're making this mistake? Look at your click through rate on your sales page. And if it's abnormally high, over 10%, and people are abandoning on your checkout page, guess what you change? You move that damn button or you fix the sales page to where they actually have to see the thing that builds value before they get there. And if you're seeing people drop off at some point in the sales page, you don't go, well, it's too short. You look at like, what was it in that one section of the page that caused the person to be confused or to say, this is not for me, right? Recently, I had someone they were getting like 2.5 ROAS on this funnel that went from a sales page to a checkout page, and they were trying to figure out ways to increase it. And they were monkeying with all kinds of stuff, and they were starting to break the funnel. And all I did was look at their heat mapping, and I found one section right here, one single section in the sales page where their drop off rate was like 30% at that one section. I gave them a new section, right? I just replaced it. I put what needed to be in that section instead, and their ROAS went up to like 4.2 or something like that. So I mean, just think about that for a second. One change, you have to know where to make it. Now, you also have to know the psychology of where to change it, and that's a whole other topic that I don't have time to get into. Psychology is something I talk about in my book, The Cold Traffic Copywriting. If you want a copy of that, message me on social media to join my WhatsApp group, and I'll make sure my VA gets you a purchase link for that. But Cold Traffic Copywriting tells you how to pick the right funnel for the right stage of awareness, how to identify the weak points, how to apply the right psychology at the weak points. Because what will happen is people will say, well, I'm losing people here, and so I'll do blank. And whatever goes in that blank is usually the wrong psychology. They try to sell too soon, they try to build trust too soon, or they try to oversell and overinform when they should be selling. It's either overselling when you're selling too soon when you're supposed to be educating, or educating too much when you're supposed to be selling. How do you know the difference? Back to the stages of awareness. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4. Stage 1 and 2, they're not ready to be sold yet. You got to educate them, but you got to make sure that you transition into the close at the right time. And my book, Cold Traffic Copywriting, tells you the sequential psychology for moving them through there. If you get a stage 3 person and you try to educate them, they don't want to be educated. They want to know the matching criteria for how they decide whether you're better than your competitors. And so if you exhaust them by making them go through a bunch of explanations about other stuff that they already know, they're going to leave. So what you do when you look at those drop-off points in your webinar, in your VSL, on your sales pages, you think, what stage of awareness am I really talking to here? And when you figure that out, and you will be able to, if you're actually looking at your numbers, you figure that out, you can tailor your message for that stage. The other thing you'll see on heat mapping, and this is really, really common, is people clicking things that aren't clicky things, right? You see like people clicking an image, but the image doesn't go anywhere. And you think, oh, it's not a big deal. They're clicking the image. It is a big deal, because what's happening in that person's mind is they're going, this website's broken, I'm leaving. That's called a rage click, right? When a person clicks something that they think is going somewhere, they're not going to think, oh, I'm a dummy, I clicked that thing that's not supposed to go somewhere. They think, this is broken. That's what they think. I know they're wrong, but if you have something that looks like a link and a bunch of people are clicking it, either remove it or make it lead to like a pop-up, or do something with it to where their expectation is met. Don't take them away from the page. Really common problem is people put their logo at the top of their page, and a bunch of people click that thinking they're going to the home page, and they see it's broken, they leave the website. If you take your logo off the top of your page, if you have it right there or there, you'll probably make more sales. And look at your drop-off rate when you do that. Or some people are seeing that someone's leaving their page right away and they don't even bother to test their page speed. Or this is a good one. They'll change the offer, but they won't realize that what's happening is the scroll is stopping before people ever get to the offer. And the problem that needs to be changed is the headline. And you've got to know the psychology of the headline. Are you starting to see where like the leaky pipe has places where you can tell where the leak is? And you can either guess and change a bunch of other stuff that's irrelevant and possibly break the things that are working, or you can zero in on the thing that is. That's what troubleshooting is. And troubleshooting is not fun. It's not sexy. It's boring. I like doing it because I'm a geek, but it's one of those things where like people don't like to have these big spreadsheets with all these numbers in it. But guess what? If you don't have that, you're not going to scale your business. If you don't know your numbers, and more importantly, you can't use those numbers to zero in on the place in the funnel that's broken, apply the right psychology and fix it. So 10% of people going through to your checkout page, 10% of people who hit your checkout page should check out. That's a good number. That's the law of averages, 10%, 10%. Can you increase that? Yeah. You can increase the checkout page rate up to 20, 30%. I've seen people do that. But here's what you don't do. When you look at the percentage of people who are clicking through to your checkout page, if it's 10% or more, and then you look at the people who check out on your page, and that's 5%, and you're thinking, well, I got to increase my sales, so I'm going to change my ads. Don't change any of that. Change the checkout page. That's what's not working, right? It's at 5%. It should be at 10%. Fix that. Split test it. Don't. That's the other thing I should be talking about. That's in chapter like 11 of my book. I think you should always be split testing. I knew a guy who had a supplement funnel that was converting at like 3 or 4%, and he started scaling his ad spend, and he saw his CPMs go up, and he started panicking. He started trying to lower those, and he almost broke the funnel doing that. I actually talked him off a ledge on that, but then during the time when I was not, like during the week when didn't have a coaching call with him, he comes back on the call and he's like, I changed this, this, and this, and now it's not working. And I'm like, please tell me you have the old version. And he didn't. And guess what? Couldn't recover it. Couldn't get back to where he couldn't recover it fast enough and make his money fast enough to even keep paying me for coaching. It was very sad. He burned down what could have been a multi-million-dollar business. Supplements is huge if you can make it. Hard to do on paid ads. And the problem was he changed the sales page. And when I looked at his numbers, the problem was not on the sales page at all. It was in the checkout page. That's a mistake right there, is you're fixing the wrong thing. And unless you're troubleshooting at a very specific, very geeky, very non-sexy type of level and knowing exactly where the leaks in your pipe are, your funnel may work for a while, but I guarantee it's going to break at some point. And when it does break, you're not going to know how to fix it. So this whole thing about one funnel away is nonsense. It's one funnel that's troubleshoot and split tested like crazy. I mean, if you want to say it that way, that's a lot of work. But the most important thing, and this is the last thing I'm going to say, by the way, if anyone's listening to this and is thinking, this sounds really great, I'd like to work with you guys. I actually do. I'm a partner in an agency. We're not onboarding anybody new right now because we're full right now, but we should be able to by the early next month. So if you're interested, the time to start a conversation with us is now. And this is, by the way, if you actually have like some ad spend momentum going and you're looking to scale. If you're looking to start from scratch and you don't have much money, you probably need to just get one of my books. But if you're at this point where you're like, Seth, this makes a lot of sense. I've got a funnel. It's stuck. I know that if it could scale, I could open that second location, make more sales, hire more employees, whatever you want to do. Message me on social media and I'll tell you how to get in contact with us. Again, we wouldn't be ready to do anything just yet, but hopefully you're starting to see that there's some expertise here, right? 20 something years of doing this, you're going to make enough mistakes to figure out what works and what doesn't. And the three things are trying to do things that lower your CPM is a mistake. Anything that you do with the intent of lowering your CPM is a mistake. You need to be beefing up your profits on the back end. If you start trying to lower your CPM, you will crash your funnel. It may work for a while, but you will eventually crash it. You'll start attracting a bunch of people who aren't even interested or even qualified. So second thing is, I actually forgot the second thing. The second thing is relying on only the front end sales to make all your profits and not knowing your lifetime value per customer and doing anything to actually beef up the value of a long-term customer. Again, the point of ads is not to make profits on the front end. If you can, great. That's just gravy. The point is to acquire customers and to increase their lifetime value and use them to get more customers through referrals and things like that. That's the real goal. If you make the goal to make all your profits on the front end, you're not going to get very far. You may have made it where you are now getting there, but what got you, my old daddy said, what got you here today ain't going to get you where you want to go next. It become the obstacle of getting where you want to go next. That's what my daddy used to say. So the third thing, of course, is troubleshooting. And this is what I'm going to leave you with. Marketing is really about two things. It's about math and it's about psychology. Math tells you what's broken. Psychology tells you how to fix it. That's an oversimplification because I have over 25 books on marketing that talks about the psychology. But I found that most people are either looking at the wrong numbers, trying to improve the wrong numbers, or don't even know their numbers. And that's like a pilot, right? Flying through a storm and basically with like electrical tape over his instruments so he can't see them. You might make it a while. You're going to crash at some point because you got to fly by your numbers and not by your feelings. And if you don't know your numbers, guess what you're going to fly by? Your feelings, your instincts, your hunches. Bad marketing advice from people who don't know everything you just learned today. Third one is, I'm sorry, but knowing your numbers is first. The third one is troubleshooting. I'm already on that. Knowing where and how to fix the broken spot is, I don't know anybody. Now, maybe they're out there and I've never heard of them before. I don't know anybody else in the world who has a psychological persuasive writing technology like mine that helps people to zero in on specifically the place in the funnel that needs to be fixed. And more importantly, the psychology for fixing it. I don't know anybody else out there like that who has built a system like mine. And this has been pressure tested in like thousands of different businesses. It was endorsed by the legendary marketer, Dan Kennedy. Okay. Not bragging, but I am bragging. So I don't know anybody else who has a system like that. So I can't tell you like in the next 5 minutes, the psychology of every single step, but I do have books written on it. Those are the three things. The goal of lowering your CPM is a mistake. Trying to rely only on the front end to make all your profits without knowing your average lifetime value per customer and improving it is a mistake. And the biggest, most common mistake is guessing instead of troubleshooting, or not knowing how to troubleshoot, or not bothering to troubleshoot. Imagine if your car breaks down tomorrow, stops working. What are you going to do? Replace the car? That's what most people will do. Replace the funnel. It's not working. Do it over. Are you going to replace the tires? Guessing that it's the tires? Are you going to replace the engine? Guessing that it's the engine? Are you going to replace like the frilly little things on the dashboard and put chrome highlights on it and think that's going to fix it? No, you're going to pay a specialist to go in there to look for that one little part that's either broken or worn out or needs to be replaced, and they're going to fix it. And it may cost you a little bit of money, but you're not going to have to replace the whole damn car to do it. So that's it. Now, if anybody in here is not in my free group where I actually advertise my marketing workshops, again, send me a message on social media. Just show some intent that you're ready to do something. If you want to get my book, Cold Traffic Copywriting, and you don't already have it, it's going to be for sale in my WhatsApp group. You got to join the group to get the buy link, though. But let me just leave you with this. Cold traffic is absolutely the best way to break out of your warm network and to really scale your business. It's really the only way to do it. And if you've reached a point where you started to get excited because you're starting to break out of your warm network, but your ads and your funnels have reached a point where it just seems like they're stuck, they can't scale, I guarantee you it's for one of the reasons that I just covered on this live. So you can take this live, you can listen to it over and over, and you can go and apply this yourself, or you can get in touch with me, join my group coaching program. One-on-one is full right now, or you can talk to me about my agency, but please do something different. You learned something today. If you got a funnel that's stuck, you just learned how to get it unstuck. That's going to be it for today. I'll see everybody.